Welcome to Joe College Radio. I'm Miles King, joined by my co-host Jordan Lindeman. This is part 2 of our 3-part podcast this week. This episode you're listening to right now is the preview of next week's games. Jordan, are you ready to preview some college football?
I'm ready. I'm excited for next week. We've got some good games on the docket.
All right, first up, number 9, Tennessee at number 8, Texas A&M. College Game Day has disappointingly selected this game, so the Tennessee Volunteers will once again be on game day. Going back to the game, what do you think is going to happen here?
Well, I'd just like to hit on that point again. It is very disappointing that they've decided to go to Tennessee for the third week out of the 6-week season thus far. Very disappointing. There are other good games. You could go to the classic showdown of Texas versus OU. You could go to the possible dethroning of the king of the SEC, Alabama at Arkansas. We've got to do everything you can to avoid going to this game again. You've spent half of your time there. We're all tired of Tennessee. But to get onto the game, I don't think this one's going to be very close. Texas A&M in College Station is totally different than Texas A&M anywhere else, and Texas A&M would beat Tennessee at home. So, I can't even imagine what they're going to do to Tennessee at their home. And seeing the two defensive ends that are absolute monsters in Myles Garrett and Deshaun Hall up against that offensive line, I'd be surprised if Josh Dobbs is ever standing in the pocket throughout this game.
Yeah, I expect A&M to play very well. You never know, though. This Tennessee team obviously has some magic in them. So can they continue it? Can they win again when they're not supposed to? We'll see. They've already had the one lucky fumble against Appalachian State and then, of course, a Hail Mary. But I agree this will be by far their toughest match. While Georgia has not been that great this year, they got blown out by Ole Miss. They barely beat Nicholls, an FCS team. So I guess this is going to be their real first test.
We can only hope. And, Tennessee has played, I guess you can say, one dual-threat quarterback at Ohio. But, an Ohio dual threat is nothing compared to a Power 5 dual threat, specifically a Texas A&M dual threat quarterback like Trevor Knight. And he was able to break off 2 huge runs against Arkansas, one for a touchdown and one to essentially end the game. About a 60-yard scamper, and then he took a couple of knees to end the game. But they're going to have a spy on him, which just makes it easier to distribute the ball to all of his gigantic monsters of receivers.
Yeah, should be a great game. Kyle Field will definitely be rocking Saturday afternoon. Let's move on to the next one. We're going to preview number 1 Alabama visits the Hogs in Fayetteville. This is going to be a tough matchup for Arkansas for sure. Jordan, do you see them being able to get the victory here?
Miles, if their offensive line can hold it together and at least neutralize the defensive line, or not neutralize, that's probably too tall of a task, but can at least diminish the abilities of that tough Alabama front seven, there are going to be trick plays called. There's going to be a lot of crazy stuff that Bielema has up his sleeve. I think Arkansas is going to steal this one at home this weekend. This is the weekend that Alabama gets dethroned. This is Bielema's chance for a statement win. He's had 2 shutout performances against LSU and Ole Miss, but this is the win that would set him apart from any coaches we've had in recent history, and I think he's going to do it. Is that the upset alert I hear?
Jordan has just picked Arkansas to beat Alabama on the podcast. Alert, wake everybody up, wake up the neighbors. We just had a scorching hot take. That's your hot take alert.
That is the signature hot take alert sound that you'll hear on this podcast.
The signature hot take alert. Arkansas is going to try to line up and beat Alabama at their own game. They've played them close in recent years. They've had the opportunity to beat them. They just haven't been able to pull them out. I don't know if this is the year, though. Alabama just looked too dominant, too much of a powerhouse. They've got 5 stars backing up 5 stars. I would have to go with Bama on this one, and I just don't see the Hogs. They might be able to keep it close for part of the game, but Alabama, with their newly dynamic offense under Lane Kiffin, I just don't see the Hogs being able to hold them for the entire 4 quarters.
And Miles, that's going to be everybody's pick. So, of course, you have a safe pick there. But look at what Arkansas did last time Alabama came to Donald W. Reynolds Razorback Stadium, the breaking glass facade, if you will. Arkansas lost by 1 point, 13-14. We missed a PAT, and our backup running back fumbled a pass out of the back of the end zone. So if even one of those things changes, we're either going to overtime or we just beat Alabama at home. There's something about Donald W. Reynolds Stadium that these players fight whenever they're here, especially against top-tier competition, shutting out LSU 2 years ago, shutting out Ole Miss 2 years ago. Whenever we get our team in our stadium, there's something different about that team. I will be ecstatic if we pull that win off, and I think we will. But I that's all I can say. Scorching hot take, I know, but...
Donald W. Reynolds Stadium will surely be rocking Saturday night as the Hogs play host to Alabama, which should be a tough game. I definitely think it will be closer than the experts think. Closer than the experts think, to do my best Lee Corso impression. But I would have to take Bama in the end.
And currently, I believe the line is at 13, but watch that line get smaller and smaller as the week goes along.
We shall see. Now moving on to a matchup which both fan bases have to be disappointing. It's not as big as they were hoping coming into the season. Texas and OU, the Red River rivalry. Both teams 2-2. Texas coming off the loss last week to Oklahoma State, and OU regaining their winning ways by holding off TCU. Who do you see winning in this one? Both teams have had some turmoil to start this season.
Definitely. And like you said, both teams are 2-2. But get ready. Here's another scorching hot take. Like I said, both teams are 2-2, but one is far better than the other. And that's Oklahoma. They're going to beat Texas by 28 points, at least 28 points. They'll have over 300 rushing yards. This is going to be their breakout game offensively and defensively. They'll finally get things together because they remember the bitter taste they had in that mouth after this game last year. And they're going to go in and stomp the Longhorns. It won't even be close.
Bold prediction. Now, if there's any game that Texas is going to get up for, it's going to be this game. And Charlie Strong has demoted defensive coordinator Vance Bedford to just being the secondary coach, and Charlie Strong will be coaching the defense and calling the plays for the defense this week. Will that make a difference? I don't know, but...
I believe it will. It'll make them even worse.
Wow, the hot takes keep coming on Texas here. I want to pick the Horns just because I feel like they're going to be up for this game, but at the same time, like you mentioned, OU inexplicably lost this game last year, and I think they're going to be coming out for revenge and also to make a statement that, yeah, they're here to compete for the Big 12 title. So I think it will be a dominating performance by the Sooners in Dallas, and the Cotton Bowl is going to be half red by the middle of the third quarter because all the burnt orange will have left the stadium to go drown their sorrows at the Texas State Fair. Which is right outside the doors.
And like looking at this game, I don't know how you can pick Texas at all, other than assuming that they get some big plays. But after last week's performance, just utterly destroying TCU, I think they learned from the late comeback that was staged by the Horned Frogs. I cannot see, I can't even begin to imagine a way that Texas goes in and wins that game. And if they lose that game, I mean, Charlie Strong might be demoted. He might have to stop demoting people, and he might be demoted.
Yes, Charlie Strong, when the demoter becomes the demoted.
He will.
Either coach might be on the hot seat after this one.
I think if OU loses, Stoops is going to be on the hot seat by the fans. Charlie Strong will be on the hot seat by the fans. But the AD is not going to get rid of Stoops in the middle of the season. It would take something catastrophic to get rid of Stoops based on his success at OU. But Strong, he's had a decent amount of time, and he hasn't really proven anything. Everyone thought the Notre Dame game was the big chance for Texas, and now they're back, but no, clearly that's not the case.
Yep, Texas, we thought Texas was back, but they are now back to where they were before we thought they were back. Moving on to the matchup in the swamp this week, LSU, coached by Ed O, rolls into Florida, where they face the number 18 Gators. What do you think is going to happen here?
Well, actually, earlier this afternoon, I was reading a little bit of course, college football, as I do, on ESPN, and I came across a quote by Ed Orgeron pertaining to the LSU job. And he said, listen, this here, I'm going to get it. He feels that he's going to be given the full head coaching job at the end of the season. And if he's going to do that, he has to win this game. And I'm a big believer in Ed O as an interim coach. We've seen him as an interim coach be successful, not so much as a head coach when he went 3-9 at Ole Miss. But if you see just the drastic change that occurred against Missouri last week, LSU held what was coming into the game in Missouri the best SEC offense statistically. He held them to 265 total yards. LSU.
Well, let's emphasize statistically, definitely not in reality.
They can put up yards. You can't argue with that. They've got a good receiving.
Missouri does not have an offense.
We don't know that yet. Based on recent history, you could say that, but Drew Lock is coming into his own, and watch out. They almost beat Georgia, and of course, most of their stats probably came from the 79-0 win 2 weeks ago. But like I said, he held their offense to 265 total yards. LSU ran for 418 yards. I think Ed O has really got something brewing up there. He's got his team fired up, and they're going to go into the Swamp and steal a victory over a top 20 team. I don't see any improvement week to week from Florida. I did early, but now it seems like since that very deflating Tennessee comeback, they just haven't been the same team. Only beating Vandy by 7, a 13-6 victory, which is even less exciting than that Wisconsin-Michigan game. It's just hard to believe. But I just don't see the Gators pulling it out.
Yeah, of course. LSU is a team with national title caliber talent. They have some boys down there. And Florida just hasn't quite got rolling ever since Jim McElwain has been the head coach. Not that he's a bad coach, but he just hasn't quite got them to the level of competing for SEC championships like they were before. I would have to go on your side. I think Ed O rolls into the Swamp and takes back some Gator for himself to add on to his hefty frame. But the Ed O, like you said, he has had success before as an interim coach at USC, going 6-2, and then surprisingly not getting the head job after that. I think he's going to do a great job this season, and hopefully he deserves a head coaching job. He deserves a chance again. I hope LSU will give it to him.
I hope so too. Those players really seem to love him.
Moving on, our last game of the day, number 23 Florida State at number 10 Miami. Two statements here rather. Florida State, of course, has had a disappointing season so far. They lose in a beatdown to Louisville and then dramatically at home in the last minute to North Carolina. And now Mark Richt, does he have this Miami program rolling again? They're ranked in the top 10. You know they've got talent because they're Miami, but it will be a big test for them this week to see if they can take down the Noles.
Yeah, and I'm sure you guys are thinking, Florida State's due for a victory, right? Well, you're wrong. I mean, they had such high expectations coming into the season, and obviously their fan base was let down very quickly. But they've pretty much been eliminated from the ACC championship game, and they were expecting a national title in their future. So to not even make their own conference championship game is unfathomable for them. And whenever you see a top team like that who loses a big game and then loses another one in such a deflating way, I think they're going to come out flat again. And I think if they can't beat North Carolina at home, how are they going to beat this Miami team that's stacked with talent on the road?
Yeah, it will definitely be a big ask for Jimbo to get his guys up and ready for this game after they have an 0-2 start in the ACC. That's going to be a challenge. But we'll see if Mark Richt, what he's able to do with this Miami program. Of course, he is an alumnus of Miami. So going back home, I'm sure that's exciting for him to see Miami return to national prominence. And I'm sure he'd love nothing more than a big victory to put him back on the map here.
And you have to wonder, is Georgia second-guessing their AD and firing Mark Richt, who immediately brings Miami back to where they were so many years ago? And then, of course, Georgia's fall from glory. I don't know. I think
I wouldn't go as far as to say they're back to where they were completely, but
they're not a dominating team yet, but they haven't been in the top 10 in a long time.
Yeah, they're on the right trajectory now at last. All right, that concludes part 2 of this week's podcast. Thank you guys for listening. If you haven't already listened to part 1, be sure to give that a listen. And up next, we will have part 3, where we will answer some listener questions. But once again, thanks for listening, and thanks for previewing next week's games with me, Jordan.
Of course. It's always a blast.
All right, have a good one. Be sure to listen to part 3 coming up next.